Hi there. Yes, I'm here to talk about big data and lean agile. Effectively, nowadays, every business is a software business. With Google, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and the digital unicorns dominating growth, in order to compete and to thrive, traditional businesses need to adopt digital approaches through all strands of their business. My name's Cadi Jones. I am the commercial director for a company called Beeswax. We provide programmatic software for brands. And I'm just going to take you through a little bit about what we're seeing some of those brands that we work with doing in that digital transformation space. I want to start with a quote from the Mary Meeker report. The last one came out in 2019. And she specifically called out the rapid growth in digital data. In fact, she said the rapid rise of gathered, analyzed digital data is often, and this is the key bit here, core to the holistic success of the fastest growing and most successful companies of our time around the world. The piece I think that's really crucial here is that rapid rise. She's really calling out how quickly this has come upon us. And David Boyle, who's the director of audience strategies, likens audience data to the X-ray. So in the early days, X-rays were invented and people were really excited. You could finally see what was going on inside the body. And it took a whole 100 years for the X-ray to be integrated into doctors' standard medical practice. So while it feels like it's really the time of using data to understand audiences, it's really perhaps early days for most brands to understand how to do this in a meaningful and integrated way consistently. What I do think is worth noting, we heard Daniel Binns' presentation this morning where he showed the rapid adoption of modern technology. So I'm not saying it will take 100 years, but I am saying I think while it feels like it's right now, we're probably still very much at the beginning of this journey. And so I want to make the case for why marketing can be the central pillar point to demonstrate digital transformation through your organization. We've heard throughout today, even just in the conversation now, about the wealth of data that's available within media. And we see brands that we work with using data that they get from digital media to optimize their digital media spend, to drive their wider performance metrics across their business, and even to enrich their understanding of their consumers, of their audiences. And we were introduced as rapid fire rounds, so I haven't got much time, so I'm just going to give one simple example as we go through, but I'll be around here if anyone would like to talk further as we go on. So if I take optimization in more detail, optimization is actually the dictionary definition of both the combination of lean and agile approaches. Lean is all about reducing waste, cutting down on what you're focusing on, to focusing on the things that are going to make the key differences to your business. Whereas agile is much more about getting more effective, making sure the things that you're doing are really working well, and constantly experimenting to try new things and make sure that you are learning. And so when you combine that getting more effective, that trying new things, that diagnostics, together with reducing waste, keeping a tighter focus on what's working and what's not working, you literally have the job description of any media trader right there in terms of that optimization. And so when we think about optimization and what that might mean, generally our customers are tying it back to one of these, or more of more than one of these 4 factors. So firstly, looking at which are the audiences who are really valuable. If you're a brand and you have first-party data, this is more valuable than any other data you can possibly access. Where is really, really important as well. The environment in which you're connecting with those users, with those audiences, has a real impact on how they're going to react. So does the when, not just time of week or hour of the day, but looking at how long since that person last interacted with your brand. And then how much, right? Everything's got to come down to that example of value associated with those 3 prior factors. So if I dig deeper just into one of those factors, I'm going to take the first one, the who, because that's probably an example where there's been really dramatic change in how brands are approaching that in the last 2 years. We've really seen the move from brands rushing to get a DMP in place so they could put their users into segments, to wanting to get a much better understanding of their audience. A user an audience member is not necessarily high value, low value. They're not mums or dads. They're not good or bad. But each user in that moment and with the offer that you're putting in front of them has a unique value, a unique score. And being able to think about that and value that appropriately is very interesting. And so if I go back up a level, when we think about those 4 factors, what the media buying systems that you're working with are taking into account, they are taking the who, the when, the where, and the how much, and combining them using much, much more complex math than I've used up here. It's not just a multiplication. But they're using that math to inform how much is this piece of inventory worth to me right now with this user in this particular environment. And pinning together all of those data points in order to learn. And so this is one example of how they are effectively collecting the data that makes sense to them. They're using that to build a model, a theory of how valuable those users are. They're testing it, they're trafficking campaigns and seeing what's working, and then they're taking the data from those campaigns and using that, again, to make that model more effective. And that is a brilliant way that we see the CMOs that we work with modeling out digital transformation best practice, lean and agile practices to their entire businesses, taking marketing out of the remit of the fluffy and into data-driven digital transformation. Thank you very much.
We've got time for one question. We've sort of been up against it, but we've got one question. Yes, question here. If you grab your microphone and press the button.
I hadn't realised there was a button.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's the answer. That's the answer.
Hello?
Yes, go for
it. First of all, thank you. That was really good. How do you... Oh, I've lost it now. How do you actually... Could you give us a flavour of how you score the user? What is the sort of framework? So you mentioned the bid versus scoring. What does it look like? And what sort of metrics do you put into this?
You might take into account any number of different things. How loyal that customer is. It really varies a lot depending on the type of business you're operating with. How many products they use from within your suite, how many touch points you have, what the richness of data there is, right through to anything else you know about them, and that length of time. And I think that's really building out that first-party data, that understanding of those audiences allows you to then ensure that you have the right approach with that whole cohort of people who may be in that same similar category, but there may be nuance within that category. So instead of it just being, yes, you're a mum, or no, you're not a mum, it's, well, you may be a mum, but you're also into sports, or you're and so on. So taking into account all of those different categories. It would be very, very different for a bank than for an FMCG company, but happy to talk afterwards.
Okay,
Thanks
lovely.
very much.
All right. Thanks very much indeed, Cadi.